The following is for educational entertainment purposes only and not to be taken as actual advice or academia knowledge-based material resource. Hence, always do your research of credible information. Under the fair use copyright laws, this video contains pieces of copyrighted works which I do not own and were not specifically authorized to be used by the copyright holders, but which we believe in good faith are protected by the federal law and fair use doctrine for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, parody, or research, and is not an infringement of copyright. We believe this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law. The following also contains unintentional suggestive content, opinionated subjects, and censored coarse profanity language that may not be suitable for different age groups. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ding, ding, ding!
It's go time!
Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana, The Life of Reason, The Phases of Human Progress, 1905-1906. This is the original quote from philosopher George Santayana that has, as a result, been paraphrased and used in variations to become a quote or a word or phrase that most of us know as, "Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." In our world today, we define a lot of things by acronyms, LOL, TMI, and such. I think certain common words as history holds a particular acronym in mind, that being
Wait for it.
hierarchy, iconography, sociological, time, oration, recollection, yesterday.
Nerd!
What do we know about history?
That show stopped being funny!
According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, one of the short explanations to describe history is events of the past.
Duh.
Then we have a longer and a bit more complex definition to describe history as the discipline that studies the chronological record of events, quote, as affecting a nation or people, end quote, based on the critical examination of source materials and usually presenting an explanation of their causes. History is treated in a number of articles for the principal treatment of the subject of historiography and the scholarly research necessary for the discipline. So in more ways than one, we can easily determine this from a finite point of view as a collection or series of articles that tells of humanity for over 10,000 years of recorded forms of sentience. All the series of events that have transpired from the past to the present onto the future, whether or not in relation to the individual, land, or iteration, through the manipulation of natural resources for the means of progress. Obviously, that explanation was long-winded on my part, but I do want to point out that all too often the term history can be compared to another particular concept.
Causality.
But that's for a future video. So, moving on. Regardless, this could be seen from a particular viewpoint in most cases from both aspects. Some even view history as non-existent and a particular form of human invention that nowadays is deemed unnecessary and is more of a problem than it's worth.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Okay, hold your horses. Good grief. Let's dive a little more about the idea of history as a whole, as interpreted from the west to the east, as best, brief, and digestible as possible. Though I can't promise this will all be done in one video, so this may end up being a two-parter. I will point out that this is my own personal theory and conclusions behind the idea of history, so I'm aware that there will probably be some subjects that may sound impractical. I hold no PhD or any scholarly work, so take it with a grain of salt and consider doing your research like I have done in my personal attempt here today. That being said, I do acknowledge the fact that history has been horrendously biased, leading to systemic racism and discrimination towards African Americans, Hispanic cultures, and other ethnicities here in the US. The same thing goes for the recent demonstrations of discriminatory bigotry towards the LGBTQ community, the non-binary community, the Asian culture, and other relevant conflicts going on in the world today. So if throughout this video I make any indications of biases or stereotypes unintentionally moving forward, I sincerely apologize. Don't forget to comment at the end of this video for any fair constructive criticism and corrections. Be nice about it and no threats please. With all that said and done, let's proceed.
Hold on to your butts.
History in the West is normally derived as Western civilization. Its roots can be traced from the Mediterranean and Europe, from ancient Greece, the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance era, all the way to the Industrial Revolution and what we've come to call as the Technological Renaissance. Keep in mind that scientists have calculated that the Earth itself is well over 4.5 billion years old. Also, according to anthropologists, about 2.3 million years ago or so, the first archaic human beings, Homo habilis, started roaming the Earth, which ushered one of many beginning iterations of human evolution since the beginning of life about 4.2 billion years ago. It took a few tries before the Homo sapiens came into the picture and survived to this day for about 300,000 years. Since then, through various innovations, including communication methods such as papyrus scrolls and the Phoenician alphabet, this has led to the continuation of accounts recorded in human evolution to form human history and knowledge as we know of today. Apparently, I'm boring you guys to death, so I'll try to speed it up here. This whole outline to encompass the Western civilization's history is that of science, philosophy, theology, democracy, architecture, literature, and art in the Western sense, obviously. Okay, not like that, but close enough. Stay with me here. As a result of the past onto the present and unknown future, the Western civilization has gone through a series of bombardments that have left continuous forms of revolutions in the name of reason, power, understanding, growth, experience, disassociation, and overall ontology of the human progress in the West. Seemingly.
Where are you going with this?
It's not unlike human beings to question their own history or history in general, leading to the great disillusions that are not uncommon in today's world. The common saying amongst individuals of the current modern era often make innate questions of themselves, myself included. I think I was born in the wrong era.
What are you, fucking stupid?
Just an aneurysm out of sheer stupidity.
We already have enough historians, anthropologists, archaeologists, and other scientific individuals who are 10,000 times smarter than me. Therefore, I can assure you that if you want to go back to the time period of carnage, terrible hygiene, archaic government practices, arcane cults, massacres, the start of the plagues, and
A myriad of problems conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense.
you can be damn sure that you will regain your clarity and say to yourself, yeah, I'm good.
Oh, good for you!
Plus, we don't have flying DeLoreans yet, so that rules it out.
What are you looking at, butthead?
What do you think I'm looking at, Biff? I'm looking at that thing you call a head, which you don't have because you don't know how to read or think. All you know what to do is take, eat, and shit like a primordial ape. What you gonna do? Hit me? I bet you don't hit as hard as your mom after I did her last night, you son of a...
That escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Yes, it did, Ron Burgundy. Let's just say that escalation is an element that pertains to what analytically composed, contrasted, and continues to this day to be the foundation of Western civilization in history books. That being competition. Or to put it in better terms, hierarchy.
It's about time!
Hierarchy. A system, organization, and or group that has individuals ranked one above the other to status or authority. Now, competition in a way relates to this before it was more articulated and systematically structured in the world we know of today. Competition in the very beginning of Western civilization was immensely brutal, almost Cain and Abel-like proportions. Combat and feats of strength were the primordial and ancient methods of the dominance hierarchy within the hunting culture. There are more ways to define the dominance hierarchy. I believe the teachings of Charles Darwin, Henry David Thoreau, and Jordan B. Peterson is a good place to start to get a general understanding of these attributes. I will say that hierarchies, and especially the dominance hierarchy, plays an attribute in history because examples like legends, myths, fables, and tales of the strong warriors and kings plays an outline of said dominant acts. The Spartan Empire, Roman Empire, and Anglo-Saxon knights go more notice in the findings that question beyond the natural ways of the things in existence. However, over time, hierarchies would branch from different cultures, professions, schools of thoughts, aka education, and hobbies. It's obvious that each period in history has involved wars fought, lost, and won. Of course, breakthroughs in various schools of thoughts, progress of any kind, shape, or form, and the individuals involved in those prolific moments has also shaped human history. Today, anyone who is a descendant of such innovators like Thomas Edison, Walter Elias Disney, Henry Ford, Stephen Hawking, and so on, carry with them the reputation and inheritance that is recognizable and therefore not to be trifled with.
Meanwhile, if I can grab your share of the market, put a little coin in my pocket by being the asshole, well, what the hell, know what I mean?
Danny boy, you are such a prick.
Ridiculous here.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Can we please move on here, Bill? Oh, how the ways have changed. The very idea that the Maslow pyramid exists as a symbol of socioeconomic depiction and motivator makes you think to yourself to say, why did I even go to college if someone who has no experience and did not attempt to work hard towards something for an actual rational thought or purpose towards human progress just so they can cash in all the demagogue glory up their own glory holes as we sink into poverty, climate change, polarization, and all that good old disparity at an alarming rate as another way of saying F you.
Language!
Mr. Blue...
You see my point here?
Mr. Blutarski.
But all joking aside, that last comment I made about the Maslow pyramid does bring up the next point in this discussion. The next acronym being iconography. According to the Webster's Dictionary, the definition of iconography states that the traditional or conventional images or symbols associated with a subject, and especially a religious or legendary subject, like the Last Supper portrait from Leonardo da Vinci. Now, how does this relate to history? Well, think really hard when you think of the definition, not the religious stuff which everyone is entitled to their own beliefs on.
Believe what you want to.
What I'm talking about is the part of the definition where it talks about symbols. It should be obvious. From the cave paintings, to the Phoenician alphabet, which I've mentioned before, and even the symbols of man and woman, though of course a lot is open to interpretation on that.
This is the original icon for man. The female symbol is its exact opposite.
Now, when we think of symbols, we think of forms of currency, the flags that represent the 195 sovereign states of the world, all the way down to the emojis and anything we can find on the internet.
And you believed it?
Yeah, they can't put anything on the internet that isn't true.
Where'd you hear that? The internet.
Now, I cannot stress this enough. We always have to do our research, and misinformation is becoming all too common that will hopefully be remedied someday. Nevertheless, symbols, in any sense, play such a vast role in human history that we practically find it difficult to contemplate a life without symbols. I mean, take the symbols of the Knights Templar for example. We all know how to identify with what these groups of knights from the Crusades period represented just by looking at their symbol. And sometimes, symbols change. We all know the Templars evolved or adapted over time to what we know in the West today as the Freemasons. And yes, I am referencing a lot of Dan Brown books and entertainment media. Just to be clear, I use this as a reference to actual scholastic resources that I'm pretty sure Dan Brown adapted from. I mean, his books are historical fiction for a reason. Because of this, I understand that not every historian scholar views Dan Brown as a very credible scholar here.
Could we cut to the chase? Cut to the chase?
Sorry about that. I tend to change the subject very abruptly, so forgive me for getting sidetracked. I don't want this lecture to drag on much further. Changing the subject from the West, let's transition to one of the iconography symbols of the East, one of which I'm sure we're all too familiar with at this point, the yin and yang symbol, or yin-yang. This is the symbol of Chinese cosmology and Taoism, which is a spiritual practice developed by the ancient Eastern philosopher Lao Tzu. This symbol is practically the fundamental elements and principles of life itself. This is the basis for all formalities to be considered as lucid as the flow of water in the river stream. Up is down, down is up, negative is positive, positive is negative, light is dark, and dark is light. This symbol has been the foundation of the ancient Eastern religions, which to this day is still to be the most common spiritual practice, even in the West. This symbol is widely utilized in martial arts, meditation, yoga, medicine, and any other point of reference you could think of.
Okay, I'm about to slice you up like a giant California roll.
I could go on and on about the various symbols of the world, including vexillology, the cryptic messages of the papyrus, and the Vatican archive related mumbo jumbo, but at this point I think I'm halfway done with frying all of your brain cells for those who are still watching, so let's move on to the final subject of this video, and we'll wrap it up for part 1 of this video and then on to part 2 next time. Before I begin with the last segment of this video, for all those who loved my video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe, and tune in for the next content on the way. Sociological. Now, remember when I was rambling about the dominance hierarchy triage as an example of the hierarchy aspect of the history acronym? Well, there was a reason I rambled more on that rather than the term hierarchy itself, since there are various hierarchy examples in the socioeconomic world. But to make it simple, think of focus groups. The guys who piss us off in the movie industry in more ways than one, if you know what I mean.
Well, the chart says...
I'm not asking the charts, I'm asking you!
The dominance hierarchy is by definition a type of social hierarchy with how the interaction in a group of both humanoids and mammals will in turn form ranks. When it comes to sociology in general, nearly all forms of history have been represented by the way humanity has behaved towards each other, whether peacefully or through conflict, choosing sides or going with the flow, from indecision to compromise. Since the development of communication as a means of evolutionary adaptation from the primordial volitions to represent survival, this continued to be the building grounds of sociological formations. Not just communication, but action itself. From building things to destroying things, those have stood the test of time and history. And that does it for part 1 of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe and all that good stuff. Hope you will stick around for part 2 of this bit on What Does This Mean to You? The History episode. Please comment on any constructive criticism, corrections, and all that good stuff. I just ask that you please be nice about it. Any threats or cyberbullying-like comments will be reported. Thank you all again, and I'll see you next time.